She leaned over my folding table, perfume so thick it almost choked me, and snatched the clipboard right out of my hands. "Do you have any idea who my husband is? Because if you did, you wouldn't be questioning me." Her voice was loud enough to make a nearby waiter drop an entire tray of glasses. She tossed the clipboard onto the wet grass and looked me dead in the eye. "Marcus is the CEO of Vanguard Holdings. We own half the property value in this zip code. Don't waste my time with this petty administrative garbage ever again. My name is Maya. I'm 34 years old, an architect by trade, and for the last 3 years I'd been volunteering as the HOA secretary for Oak Ridge Estates. It's a thankless job. You balance spreadsheets, you take meeting minutes, and mostly you just let angry people vent at you. Because I never yelled back, people assumed I was a doormat." Brenda had been terrorizing this neighborhood for 2 years straight. If someone parked a delivery van too close to her driveway, she threatened to have her husband's legal team ruin them. She used the word family like a weapon, constantly reminding everyone that her household operated at a different level than the rest of us. I watched her at the annual summer gala one night, swirling her wine under the patio heaters, looking absolutely unbothered. "You're dramatic, Maya," she said, smiling. "People like my husband carry the weight of the world. I make sure pests like you don't bother him. Understood?" "Understood," I replied, completely deadpan. That drove her crazy. She craved a reaction, and I never gave her one. But I had noticed something nobody else seemed to catch. At these events, Marcus never stood near her. He always looked drained, jaw tight, staring at his phone. Not the look of a proud husband, the look of a man who was already somewhere else. Then came the landscaping vote. Brenda submitted plans to annex a huge chunk of the community green space for a private party pavilion. When I emailed her that the HOA bylaws strictly prohibited this, she didn't write back. She walked directly into the management office. She slammed her designer handbag on my desk so hard the gold clasp cracked against the wood. "I'm not asking for permission, Maya. Marcus is funding the new clubhouse roof. If you don't approve this annex by Friday, I will have him pull that funding, and I will personally see to it that you are sued for harassment. You need to show some respect for the people who keep this neighborhood afloat." She leaned in close. "We dictate how things run here." "Understood," I said. And then, when she left, I opened my laptop. I didn't panic. I didn't call the other board members. I didn't post about it online. Silence is preparation. If Marcus was actually threatening to pull HOA funding, I needed to verify Vanguard Holdings' legal standing with our community. So I pulled up the county's public records portal and ran his name through the system. Property deeds came up first, then a few civil court docket numbers, and then one specific file stopped me cold. It wasn't corporate litigation. It wasn't a property dispute. It was a family court filing. I kept my face perfectly still and kept reading. It was a signed, court-stamped divorce filing initiated by Marcus himself. The date stamp was exactly 3 weeks before Brenda had walked into my office, but the real goldmine was the attached addendum, a post-nuptial agreement, quietly drafted at Marcus's request. The clauses were brutal and completely airtight. Upon the initiation of separation, Brenda was immediately stripped of all access to Vanguard Holdings' corporate assets, corporate legal counsel, and any authority to act on Marcus's behalf. Marcus hadn't just filed for divorce. He had systematically dismantled her access to his power. That quiet exhaustion I had seen in his eyes wasn't just fatigue. It was a man who had already pulled the plug. I closed my laptop, grabbed my bag, and drove to a print shop. I printed 20 high-quality copies of the filing and the postnuptial agreement. I highlighted the specific clause revoking her authority. I placed each copy inside a crisp manila folder and stacked them neatly in my canvas tote. I was ready. The HOA meeting was held in the country club banquet room. Crystal chandeliers, mahogany tables, the whole thing. The room was packed. When the open floor session began, Brenda stood up immediately. Silk blazer, perfectly composed, practically vibrating with confidence. "We all know why I'm here," she said, projecting her voice across the entire room. "The green space annex is moving forward. My husband Marcus and Vanguard Holdings will not tolerate any more bureaucratic delays. If anyone on this board wants to challenge our family, you will find yourselves dealing with corporate attorneys by tomorrow morning. Approve the motion." A heavy silence fell over the room. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I stood up, reached into my canvas tote bag, and started walking. "Before we vote," I said calmly, "there is a matter of legal standing regarding Vanguard Holdings representation." I placed a copy of the divorce filing and the highlighted postnuptial agreement in front of the HOA president. Then I continued around the table, setting a manila folder in front of every single board member and resident. I saved Brenda for last. I set the final copy down right next to her designer handbag. "According to these court-stamped public records filed 3 weeks ago," I said, looking directly at her, "you have been legally stripped of all access to Marcus's corporate assets, legal counsel, and public representation. You do not speak for Vanguard Holdings. You do not speak for Marcus. And you certainly do not dictate the rules of this neighborhood." The only sound in the room was 30 people quietly flipping through pages. The blood drained from Brenda's face. She opened her mouth, maybe to call me dramatic again, maybe to say, "Don't embarrass us one more time." But nothing came out. I wasn't done. Because Vanguard Holdings is a publicly traded company, Marcus's corporate compliance office was legally required to log the separation of assets. I contacted them directly to confirm Vanguard's position on this HOA annex. They issued a formal compliance report. Page 4 in your packets. It explicitly states that Vanguard has zero financial interest in this neighborhood, and that any attempt to use their corporate name to intimidate this board is a direct violation of their legal protocols. Brenda reached for her handbag. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't grip the clasp. The board didn't even need a formal discussion. The green space annex was unanimously denied in under 60 seconds. Brenda stood up. Her chair scraped hard against the polished floor. She didn't look at anyone. She walked out of the room and didn't come back. I didn't chase her. I didn't demand an apology. I packed up my tote bag and went home. The next morning, I blocked her number, filtered her emails straight to trash, and instructed the security gate that she was no longer permitted entry into the HOA management office. 3 days later, I was leaving a cafe when a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Marcus stepped out. He looked completely different. The exhaustion was just gone. He walked up and extended his hand. "Maya," he said quietly, "I heard about the meeting. My lawyers have been trying to get her to accept the reality of this filing for weeks. You did what I couldn't do publicly. Thank you." "Understood," I said, and that was that. "Here's what I want you to remember. Revenge doesn't always look like screaming matches or blown-up confrontations. Sometimes it looks like a perfectly formatted PDF, a court-stamped date, and a quiet room reading the absolute truth. They think you're weak because you don't yell back. But they forget that the architect always knows exactly where the structural flaws are hidden. I didn't destroy her life. I just handed her the receipts. Because panic is loud, but silence is preparation.